Good evening, dear viewers. Welcome to the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinox Television. In our top stories, Clarence Seedorf will henceforth no longer serve as head coach of the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon. Clarence Seedorf and his assistant Patrick Kluivert have been sacked by the president of the National Cameroon Football Federation, FECAFOOT, in consultation with the executive committee. This after the Minister of Sports and Physical Education, Professor Narcisse Molekombi, served a letter to the FECAFOOT president demanding the dismissal of Clarence Seedorf as a result of poor management of the national football team. And equally, Luis Paul Motaze, Minister of Finance, reassures the reconstruction of the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon ravaged by the Anglophone crisis, which is close to 3 years old today. He equally stated the revamp of entrepreneurial activities in the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon. Equally, the rehabilitation of Sonara, that's a national oil refining company that was ravaged by flames on the 31st of May 2019. This was in a preparatory meeting of the 2020 state budget. More in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast. Once again, good evening. Welcome to the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinox Television. The head coach of the national football team, or the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon, Clarence Seedorf, has been sacked alongside his assistant Patrick Kluivert, and they will no longer be managers of the national football team. Henceforth, the decision was taken by the president of FECAFOOT in consultation with the executive committee of the Cameroon Football Federation. This after the Minister of Sports and Physical Education, Professor Narcisse Molekombi, served a letter to the FECAFOOT president, Seydou Mbobonjoya, to sack Clarence Seedorf for poor management of the national football team. And our reporter Hermine Iluga went through the letter and put together this report.
Cameroon's Minister of Sports, Professor Narcisse Molekombi's recent audiovisual reaction emphasized on the balance sheet of the team's participation in Egypt 2019 African Cup of Nations. Narcisse Molekombi has emphasized on Clarence Seedorf's inability to instill discipline within Team Cameroon in course of the competition. Accusing fingers via the minister points at Seedorf of being unable to manage the group and boost the fighting spirit, while also highlighting differences between the coach and his assistants, which made their working relationship difficult. With the facts stated, the minister has reiterated it might be difficult for Clarence Seedorf to continue as head coach of the Indomitable Lions, given that instructions have been given to the president of FECAFOOT to analyze the clause in Seedorf's contract before a decision be taken. According to the minister, this will go a long way to restructure the national team and as such create better atmosphere for reforms at the levels of the men's national football teams.
That was Hermine Iluga reporting, and Clarence Seedorf and his assistant Patrick Kluivert will no longer serve as managers of the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon. Henceforth, that's contained in a communique or a release signed by Seydou Mbobonjoya, president of the Cameroon Football Federation, upon the high instruction of the Minister of Sports and Physical Education for poor management of the national football team. And it should be recalled that the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon were booted out of the 2019 AFCON at the knockout stage of the competition. And with regards to the sacking of Clarence Seedorf and his assistants, we have on the platforms Manjuk and Gabriel. Good evening.
Good evening to you, Innocent Aze.
You certainly got the news just streaming in, the sacking of the head coach of the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon, Clarence Seedorf, and his assistant, Patrick Kluivert, for poor management of the National Football Federation. How do you welcome it in the first place?
Well, as somebody who has been following the news minute by minute, particularly concerning Patrick Clyde, that is Patrick Clyde Seedorf. Patrick, we have Clarence Seedorf, I want to say, and Patrick Kluivert. These two guys that have been so great players. We know them in terms of their days in club football. But since the African Cup of Nations ended, it has been from one rumor to another. Remember, we discussed on that aspect the fact that Patrick Kluivert wasn't really comfortable, as he actually came up clearly to say that he is tired of being an assistant trainer and he wants to be a trainer on his own. And already that was telling us that the atmosphere within the Indomitable Lions during their stay in Egypt wasn't all the best. And talking about Clarence Seedorf, who actually managed the national football team for this short period of time, because he took up office August 2018, when by then we had Pierre Ishmael Bidungpat, who was still the Minister of Sports and Physical Education, and likes of, I'm sure, still the Normalization Committee that was already still controlling FECAFOOT by then. Seydou Mombonjoya and the likes came and met Clarence Seedorf already on as a head coach. Now, talking about the sacking, I know it is not something which is actually surprising or shocking for me as a journalist, because we know since the Nations Cup ended, we have been having information stories about other countries that have sacked their coaches. We remember, as an example, in Egypt, the head coach was fired and the Football Association president also resigned from his position. That was very clear. Many people were asking if it was going to be the same in Cameroon, but in Cameroon, the blames have been put on the head coach. The blames are on the head coach, who is now the scapegoat, as we always put it. He is the one who has been taken as a scapegoat alongside his assistant. It was a very, when we look at the period of Clarence Seedorf within the national football team, first to talk about their performance at the African Cup of Nations, we know they had a total number of 4 matches that they played. We are talking about 3 group matches and the 8 finals knockout match that they played. Total, there were 4, and in all of these games, Clarence Seedorf managed just 1 win, and we had 2 draws and a defeat in the hands of the Super Eagles of Nigeria. And many people had complained the coaching style of Clarence Seedorf. Remember, from match day 1 to match day 4, meaning all the matches, Clarence Seedorf wasn't even certain of his first 11, meaning maybe many people were, there were some insiders who were telling him, don't take this, don't pick this one, use this one for the next game, use this one, and his play style changed in any of the game. Well, I'm not a technician, but most of the technicians or the consultant we had, they say, they complain, but they say it is in view of their opponents that they have bet. We have seen so many teams playing in this African Cup of Nations, not so many changes of lineups or the styles of play, but we saw that with Clarence Seedorf, and many already mentioned of the fact that he might not have a long stay with Cameroon, and it is what we have just seen. And to know that totally Clarence Seedorf had 12 games that he managed as the head coach of the Indomitable Lions, 12 games in which we have just 4 victories for Clarence Seedorf. The victories came when they played against Zambia. It was in a friendly. They played against the Comoros. That was a qualifier encounter. Malawi and Guinea-Bissau at the African Cup of Nations. And in this number of games, Clarence Seedorf played a total of 5 draw. 5 matches ended in a draw without a win against Comoros when they played in the qualifiers leading to the African Cup of Nations. At home, we had Ghana at the African Cup of Nations, Benin at the African Cup of Nations, and also the likes of Mali and even Malawi, that Cameroon had draws with them under the control of Clarence Seedorf. And that is the draws that we had, and 3 defeats that they recorded. Clarence Seedorf had a defeat in the hands of Morocco, had a defeat in the hands of Brazil. It was an international friendly. And at the African Cup of Nations knockout stage, Nigeria defeated Cameroon by 3-2 when we know Cameroon was already leading. So from every indication, when we look at the record of Clarence Seedorf and his play style and every other aspect included, those are the things that actually, for me, led to his sacking, because he did not actually give us the result we expected. And we know we know many people were expecting Cameroon to keep that trophy they won in 2017. Remember, it is just by, I will say by chance, as we usually put it, that by luck, that Egypt is hosting this Nations Cup. It was supposed to be in Cameroon.
And can't we say that it was so early for Clarence Seedorf and his assistants to be sacked as head coaches of the national football team, and equally considering the fact that maybe they needed enough time to organize maybe the national football team and equally bring in new talents, people who can equally manage the team and not depending on sole players?
If you ask a technician, football technician, they will tell you that the number of time or the number of matches that Clarence Seedorf had was too much for him to have perfected himself. Many technicians will tell you that as a professional, Clarence Seedorf was supposed to have already had a first sight of what he has played some matches with African teams, and he was supposed to have this knowledge of African football. Remember, he is somebody who did not till now. Maybe if you wake Clarence Seedorf that he's sleeping, please, first 11, we are having a game against neighboring Equatorial Guinea. Clarence Seedorf will be confused. He will not actually tell you which player he thinks. Maybe it was the game against Nigeria that many people thought Clarence Seedorf has finally had his first 11, but still, it was still this selection. He did not actually master his players. So that is it. Those are the little things that caused it. But I'm thinking that maybe there was some interference too. We should not lay all blames on Clarence Seedorf. Remember, Cameroon football is rotten. Cameroon football is a problem. Many people will always want to interfere, and you shouldn't be surprised that after Clarence Seedorf has been fired, even though the minister said they are not owing him, they paid him from August 2018 to August 2019. When Clarence Seedorf is going to organize his own press conference to say what was happening within the den, that is when you understand that the den is having problem. It is not all about Clarence Seedorf, but the administrators themselves, they should be asking themselves questions if they play them their own role to actually frustrate Clarence Seedorf. Because I know if Clarence Seedorf was certainly having a free hand in most of these things, maybe Cameroon would have still been in Egypt. But unfortunately, there was some interference, even though at one point we hear the minister was not allowed to go to the hotel, but you had some specific players who were allowed, who were even going to the hotel. All of that inclusive. I'm sure Clarence Seedorf has much to tell Cameroonians concerning the den and their participation at the African Cup of Nations.
Indeed, a shocking decision taken against Clarence Seedorf, head coach of the Indomitable Lions of Cameroon, for poor management of the team. Just to ask you this last question, just put yourself in the shoes of Clarence Seedorf and you receive this house message sacking you just a few months, less than a year into office after signing your contract with the Cameroon football or with the government of Cameroon, and you are sacked. How will you receive this sacking?
Well, as a coach, maybe if I was in the shoes of Clarence Seedorf first, I'll be glad that I've been sacked. One, do you know why? Because I've had knowledge, I've had little know-how about African football. That is one thing that Clarence Seedorf should be taken back, and you shouldn't be surprised that other nations in Africa will go for Clarence Seedorf. You should not be surprised about that they will go for him. And Clarence Seedorf, maybe he will feel he will feel disappointed a little bit. He will feel disappointed as a technician because he did not actually bring what when he was a player he used to do. So he did not have that time. That time wasn't there for him to actually implant it into Cameroon. But as I'm saying, I'm not laying blames on Clarence Seedorf. I'm thinking about our own football administrators. They should have a say in this, and Clarence Seedorf will certainly open the real thing behind all of this confusion within the football house.
And is it not tarnishing the image of Cameroon as a whole, always having problems with their coaches? I mean, you employ a coach and then you sign a contract with the coach, and a year after you sack him?
Many people are now even asking questions why they even sacked Hugo Bruce. Hugo Bruce would have been, if he was the one in Gabon or in Egypt, maybe he would have made more impact than Clarence Seedorf, who just took over. Many people are asking that question, but unfortunately Clarence Seedorf is gone. He too will have a little space among the list of those who have coached Cameroon. It's an experience for him. It's an experience for Patrick Kluivert too. Don't be surprised. Tomorrow, they will coach another African nation and they might bring glory to them. If not, the experience they already have with African football is going to be something on their own CV. Coaching Cameroon was a big achievement for Clarence Seedorf. Unfortunately, he left so soon.
Thank you so much. I certainly are sure that you're not going away and you'll stay with us. Meantime, we continue talking something else. We're talking about the preparation of the 2020 state budget that has begun in Yaoundé a few days after debate on the budgetary orientation in Parliament. It is ongoing in a particular context and at the time when the nation is faced by so many challenges. Luis Paul Motaze, Cameroon's finance minister, in a preparatory meeting in Yaoundé, revealed the pressing issues which have to be addressed financially next year. Some of them include financing of the defense and security forces in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon, fighting against separatist fighters to maintain peace and security, allocation of budgets to reconstruct both the Anglophone regions, especially to revamp the entrepreneurial activities, rehabilitation of the national oil refining company Sonara that was ravaged by flames on the 31st of May 2019, and finalization of some government giant projects, preparation of the African Nations Championship, that's the CHAN 2020, and the African Nations Cup CAM 2021, and various actors have been challenged to strictly ensure the effective injection of resources that will be allocated for the various projects for their prompt realization. Minister Luis Paul Motaze also urged actors to do this with discipline, rigor, professionalism, and equally transparency. And we now take you to Bamenda, chief town of the northwest region of Cameroon, to tell you how the population have expressed relief after economic operators and equally persons of goodwill decided to get rid of the heap of refuse dumped for several months as a result of the Anglophone crisis. And it should be recorded that the Bamenda City Council has been unable to ensure the collection and disposal of waste in that conflict-hit region. Details with our Northwest correspondent, Bo Stella.
This maize plant germinated and grew inside this garbage can with inscription BCC, standing for the Bamenda City Council. Its level of growth is telling of how long garbage has been left on this spot behind the premises of the Bamenda Regional Hospital. This liquid draining from the heap into the road is an indication the waste is decomposing. The markets, road junctions and most streets in Bamenda are littered with heaps of decomposing waste like this one. City dwellers seem to be getting along, seeing these heaps, but the odor it emits remains an enemy to all.
Due to the dirty impact, it makes the people around, maybe those in the hospital, it's not good because it's beside the hospital and we have patients in the hospital.
It's disturbing because customers are not coming inside the shed. The whole shed is full with flies, all flies, everywhere, flies.
In a bid to relieve city dwellers, Edge Construction Company has launched a campaign to get Bamenda regain its lost glory of being the cleanest city in Cameroon.
We thought at the level of Edge Enterprise that it is also our own responsibility to make sure that Bamenda town should assume a clean city. So when we saw the mounting garbage heaps across the town, we thought that we could bring in our own little best just to make the situation better than what it was before. Our objective is to clear it off of the garbage and allow the population, the ordinary population, to be able to feel a little bit that environment that they once had.
With the aid of front-end loaders, trucks and speeds, the construction company's workers cleared the garbage of the Bamenda Food and Tarinkon markets, Aziri Old and New Church junctions, Quen and other neighborhoods within the city of Bamenda to the admiration of its inhabitants.
It's better now.
The company, led by Tachang Pius, has so far cleared over 8 tons of garbage. The sigh of relief will be short-lived as on daily basis, the garbage keeps mounting. Although garbage in some neighborhoods are yet to be cleared, the inhabitants wish for now is for deeds like this one to be repeated most often, as they believe the company paid for cleaning the city has abandoned work.
I will now tell you about experts from the World Health Organization who have been meeting in Douala Littoral region to sensitize the population to continue the strive to fight against microbes that have been affecting adversely health of the population. It has equally contributed in paralyzing the economy of the country. Details with Hemini Luga.
It is a struggle engaged by the World Health Organization targeting the elimination of microbes in the form of bacteria, viruses and parasites. According to the experts, it is a reality which threatens the world at large. Humans and animals are all exposed.
And it's very critical now that we have the same drugs being used in humans and in animals and even in crops. And so when those drugs are used, we need to be very prudent in how we use them, because the organisms that are being exposed to those drugs can actually resist the drugs, and they can also infect humans and animals, and also can remain in the environment.
Also better elaborated on, the health experts and representatives of the World Health Organization emphasized on worrying symptoms recurrent in humans as a result of microbe resistance.
And people maybe you've experienced it, that you have a diarrhea, you get the same treatment you got 3-4 years ago, but you don't get well. It might not be that you have a problem. It might be that the agent that is causing your diarrhea is actually resistant to that treatment. And we are seeing a lot of these treatment failures in tuberculosis, in diarrhea, in HIV, even in animals.
It is evident a nation's poor health state inevitably fragilizes the economy of a country. It is thus with these remarks that the actors prone unity in the struggle at the level of nations.
We want to fight against antimicrobial resistance. We have to be together, and we talk about tripartite here. But tripartite, One Health, it is actually much more than just the tripartite. It is forecasted actually that if we don't do anything about the AMR, it will be much worse economically.
Worthy to note, this initiative by the World Health Organization went operational in 2015, leading to the subsequent training in African countries on the well-being of humans and animals.
Transportation of farm output to the markets in Melong many years back has not been all that rosy due to the deplorable nature of the seasonal roads, and most of the farm produce got bad on the way or abandoned in farms or plantations to decay. And today the population of Melong is now smiling as the local council authorities have embarked on rehabilitation of the seasonal roads to enhance flexible transportation of the farm produce to markets. Details in this report. Their farm produce will now flexibly reach the market due to the rehabilitation of the collapsed Lelemwantong Bridge in Melong and equally tarring of most rugged seasonal farm-to-market roads by the Melong Council in the Mungo division of the Littoral region. Locals applaud this effort, noting tears have finally been wiped off their cheeks.
They will be wo over wo. I don't think how many people don't die for the.
They will now have to move without the risk recorded before in all spheres. Even inundations hitting the residents during heavy rainfalls will now be over, thanks to the rehabilitation of the Lelemwantong destroyed bridge and the creation of drainage channels.
C'était l'état des pluies et le pont était gâté et il n'y avait pas moyen de passer.
Denizens who have been crying for help did more than thanking the mayor and the entire Melon Council by giving a helping hand where need be.
But we thank you plenty for mayor. We don't come here with you.
The population now hopes to farm and produce more to meet up the high demand in the markets that prevailed as a result of impassable roads. We remain in the Mungo division of the Littoral region of Cameroon to talk about commercial motorbike riders who have decided to violate orders and embark on overloading as a way of survival and equally to generate enough income for their daily needs. And so far said, it is cumbersome and expensive to transport passengers to high destinations, and overloading will certainly help to swell their income in the activity. Details with Fogwe.
Commercial motorcycles, popularly known in Cameroon as Bensikin, has gained ground in many parts of the Mungo division and widespread acceptance in many parts of Cameroon in recent years. Its ability to navigate narrow streets or roads unsuitable for cars is one of the many reasons for its popularity. Unfortunately, the rise has been accompanied by high insecurity rate. Motorcycles are designed to accommodate 2 people at a time, but the phenomenon of overloading is now the order of the day. To some inhabitants, the high rate of poverty in Cameroon is a raison d'etre for the rising phenomenon.
I'm not okay when they double us in the bike. It's just that the condition of the country. That's why it is good to buy because the petrol is expensive. To balance that, the bike people can balance the fuel. When the country is rough.
The high rate of poverty is the reason why more than 2 persons board a bike. If I were to cover a distance that costs 300 francs and I don't have the money to pay, then the only solution is for me to look for someone else to board the bike with so as to reduce cost. When we overload, at least we have something tangible to buy fuel and equally take care of our family. If you see the distance that we cover daily, then you will understand it is difficult for us. Some other inhabitants describe motorcycle riders who overload as uncivilized and ignorant of the risk involved.
Ils sont pas civilisés, ne connaissent rien. Ils sont ignorants. C'est l'ignorance qui les fait surcharger les gens.
An insurance expert explains the risk involved due to overloading. In case of any accident, the insurance company insures just 2 persons, so the additional ones are not covered. Nonetheless, commercial motorbike riders have become inevitable for daily mobility rides.
And that's it for this edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinox Television. Thanks so much for watching. Tomorrow is another day. Do have a splendid evening.